the intro theme to this game is it's fire. Okay, so I haven't played this game. What? I have stack the bales fast. That's actually kind of cool. I mean, we didn't ask for a competitive game. Got it. That's pretty cool. Okay, so in Illinois right now, farmers are now starting to take down their crops and cultivate. So like, yeah, whatever. If they're gonna do that, I'm gonna do that too. So, yeah, I'm gonna play some Farming Sim 22 today. Like, yeah, you know, everybody's out here farming. Time to get back on my farming game too. Never too late to farm. It feels good to be home again. What? Huh? Rare. What? How do you earn it? Never too late to farm. Play a save file that's more than a year old. Oh, okay. So, wait, what? Seriously? How is this a year old? I got this on Christmas of last year. And it's October. This file size is not a year long. Okay, that's a great thing to do. Before I get going, I need to listen to a booklet. Before I get going, I need to check my fuel. I need to check my my repair status. I need to check anything. Okay, if I'm not wrong. Oh, my big boy combine. I love this combine. Man, I love it how this game has really good physics for a farming game, but yeah. Anyway. So basically, if you don't know, we are the leader of a giant soybean farm. We have successfully bought all these fields and we merged them together. My weather probe. Back then, you used to have to hold down R3 in order to clean your vehicles, which was awful. You'll be surprised at how common these exact tractors here, like the Axial Flow, is really, really common. Okay, you look pretty clean. Let's clean you down. Yep. And you're almost clean. Clean everything down. We are looking good on fuel on this bad boy. The fast track that's hooked up to that green trailer might need extra diesel in it. Now, this is okay on diesel. Like, that's great. Like, this is full. This is ready to go. I am, however, going to go get fuel for this after I clean it. She does need clean, and she does need fuel. It's seen some days. This might be my first fast track. 117 meters. It's like what? About 40 gallons of diesel. How much can a tractor hold? Oh, Alexa, how much fuel can tractors hold?
Tractors can hold different fuel capacities depending on the model and type. For example, a specific tractor can have a fuel tank capacity of 39.7 liters or 10.5 gallons of diesel. It's important to refer to the specific tractor model and its manufacturer's guidelines
Alexa,
for accurate.
How much diesel can a fast track hold?
From thecarrotcompany.com has the capacity to hold 1 gallon.
What? Hold on. There's no way it holds 10 gallons of diesel. this is a fast track. A fast track is a very special tractor because well, it's in the name. This bad boy goes fast. I purchased that for my other buddies. Yeah, I can't get in these tractors. I purchased them for my other. I'm stupid. Oh my god, I'm so dumb. I forgot the fuel. The fuel station is on our really right across from our area. Okay, I know it's a farming game. I'm so glad they didn't ever make Farming Sim 20 on the console because they took that extra year of work to make this game. Like this game, like you know, like FIFA or like NBA K. I'm sorry for after this season, but I have to. Like they're literally like the same every single like game they release. Well, every time they make these games, they add more crops. They add more. Mechanics. Like this, like mechanically, like gameplay. This is way better. Like every Farming Sim 22 has been better than the last. Like this is better than 19. 19's better than 17. Like this one added like last 19 they added landscaping, which you could do stuff in the land. This one they had like grapes. Like look at the map. It's big. Look how big that map is. It's a big map. For Farming Sim that is. I mean, Farming Sim maps are naturally pretty big, but this one it's different. Also, by the way, I buy my my fertilizer and seeds from these tanks over here, which are actually cheaper, and I don't have to like do that. So yeah, I don't have to go to the area to go get them. These are actually I did calculations, and this is actually cheaper. Anyway, if you don't know how the game runs, I modified it to do 1 day in Farming Sim equals 1 month in the game, because if I did a 1 day to 1 day in real life, or if I did a 1-to-1 ratio instead of like a, let me repeat this. If I did a 1 day to 1 day ratio, it would take so much longer. If I did that, you would be sitting here for hours. And I like this game, but I'm not gonna do that. So instead there, I multiplied the day count by 30. When do you want to wake up? We're gonna wake up early. We're gonna wake up at 5. I'm gonna like turn my book on, but basically you don't have to hear it. You know, I had to hear that robot voice in Ark. Well, guess what? I can listen to it with my headset, so now you won't be able to hear it. My soybeans are grown. Yay. Ready to harvest. Oh, this is my favorite part of the game right here. Yeah, $300,000. Do we have anything in storage? No, we're dried. I usually like what's called. I think it. Okay, before I start my book, I think I sell my soybeans. Yeah, you see, unlike the previous game, this game actually has your prices fluctuate, right? So you would not want to sell, like, let's take canola here, right? You would not want to sell it in like July. This is the worst month for it because you get $913 per 1,000 liters. Here's how the prices work. Those prices down there are the price for 1,000 liters or units of product, right? So for 1,000 units of canola, if I sell it in July, you're going to get $913 per 1,000 liters. Whereas if you sold it in November, you would get up to $1,317 per 1,000 liters. So by selling it in July instead of November, you're potentially, not potentially, but you are losing money. You're not. Basically, what it means is you have to sell high, right? You're not going to sell your stocks high, right? You want to sell, or you're not going to sell your stocks low, right? You want to sell them high, because if you sell them low, you're not going to get that much money, right? But if you sell it high, you are going to get a lot more money. So I'm not wrong. I think it's like June or something, July. July, see, right? Look. if we sold our soybeans in January, we'd get $975 for 1,000 units. Or if we sell it this month, we get it for 2,285 units per 1,000. That is over double, right? So for example, if I sell it in January, the price for 1 liter of soybeans is like what, 90 cents? Meanwhile, in July, the price for 1 liter is like $2, right? So in July, $2, and like $2 and like 25 cents ish per 1,000 units. Sell at like July, you can sell it for like $2.25. Anyway, let's go take down some soybeans. Oh man, I love the harvesting mechanics in this game. I'm not wrong. It might take a little bit to... Oh yeah, I gotta unfold this bad boy. Unfold the header. Yep, I'm ready to go. Okay, yep. So I have a store right here. Oh man, it doesn't seem like this, but like, this is fun. Taking down all the soybeans. I see these exact same combines in my own home state of Illinois. Like, it'd take all the soybeans out by giant chunks, but look how little the chunks are. Like, barely, like it's so realistic. And it's not. I like how it's not like a stream. It's not like a stream with a pasted animation over it. What it is that. Yeah, basically what happens is the soybeans get separated up here, and then the bottom stalks, because if you actually look at the soybeans, they're like these little stalky plants, and you can actually see the soybeans hanging off. Like, you see those little triple-potted sap-looking things? That's the soybeans. And the rest is just these, like, stalks that's useless. So what happens is that it gets shredded up into pieces, and it gets shot out the back, and these pieces can be tilled into the ground, and it's used for biological fertilizer. So it's almost like a digestive system. Basically, it eats soybeans. It likes the soybeans, right? But it poops out the stalks. However, this harvester can output straw if it harvests wheat or canola. It does not look like this, but this is very satisfying. I remember I was planning to expand my silos over here. Like, I have property over here. This is gonna be like my facility. forgot how much soybeans I actually produced. I will miss the front loader attachment for the Magnum. I might buy Magnum. $300,000 versus like 500,000. I could sell this for $115,000. 400. $498,000 I'd have in my pocket. Sorry if I keep going back and forth. I just don't make me go awry. Nice. I'm thinking about buying the Magnum. I love the Magnum. It's one of my favorite tractors. My second favorite tractor, next to the Quadtrac. Just look at the size of this freaking trailer. I really want an auger wagon. It's a big ass wagon. Man, so I'm a little sad that they don't have the 3-point hitch. That's what I'm upset about. I wish they had that 3-point hitch back. 40. This goes 49 mile an hour. You know what? I feel like there's actually a store for these exact trailers really close to the beginning of I-39 where I live. I don't think we should have to refill this thing. I saw one of these things go down the street when I was in my high school year once. Like one of these exact ones. I love how they added thunk sounds. That is satisfying. actually starting to like these tires. Kind of like the wheels. This is... Wait a second. Look. $136,000. $136,000, right? For 70 square cubic meters versus $115,000 for 77.5 cubic meters. What? Farming Simulator 22. Oh, crap. I went across the train tracks. It's on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Yeah. In fact, if you're on PC, you'll probably get better mods. It is not available on mobile. The best farming sim on mobile is Farming Simulator 20. Oh no, going back to what I said earlier, FS20 does actually exist. It's just Farming Simulator 21 doesn't. Soybean. Tons and tons of soybean. I bought up all this guy's land on my left over here. These are actually individual fields, like the little numbers over here. And I merged them into one mighty field. The #1 buyer of soybeans in the world is China, which buys like what, 70 to 90% of all the world's soybeans. So 90% of the soybeans that are produced in the world are bought by China. Wrong. Yep, basically, it's not just soybeans. You can harvest corn. You can harvest canola, cotton. There's like, what, 21 crops? There's even potatoes. Yes, potatoes have harvesters. Yeah, there's a lot of crops down there. You can even farm trees in this game. Thanks. You too. Why did there it goes. $150,000 plus, like, really, right on the current prices. That's how much the that Magnum costs. What, like $430,000? $115,000. If I sell this harvest, I bet you I could buy that Magnum along with that trailer. $362,000. This bad boy right here. I can buy that right now, but I don't like to have less than 50,000. Like, unless I have like a crop growing, I don't like to have less than $50,000. Kind of weird how it's shaped, but you know. Okay, look, that is kind of cursed because look, you got the cab on the right, left, and like, do you see how like New Holland tractors have that like that black plate on the front? Now look where it's at on this. On the what? What? I have to see what the drivetrain for this thing looks like. Like the transmission has to be so weird. It's a derpy vehicle, but it gets the job done, right? Yeah, we still have tons of soybean to go. Power work on this field. Oh yeah, that one listened to my video. Okay, most radioactive places in Fallout. I was wanting to watch this on stream. My most radioactive place I found in Fallout, in my opinion, has to be the reactor at Mass Fusion at a nice whopping like 75 plus rads. It is extremely radioactive in that. How many rads in Sieverts? What about rads to CPM? I wish the Geiger counter in Fallout measuring like sieverts or like microsieverts or CPM, because rads I used to love them a lot, but I'm not really a big fan of rads anymore. I standardize like for me I use sieverts and counts per minute. In my opinion, sieverts is the best measurement tool for radioactivity. Counts per minute is probably a little bit better. Not really for I guess counts per minute's good for scale because, you know, it's not there's no micro, there's no like milli, it's just counts per minute, right? Yeah, you get where I'm going.
Welcome, rad friends, one and all, to this week's message from Adam that I am commanded to share. The wasteland is no stranger to radiation. After the Great War, the wasteland was covered in Adam's white glow. But even before the Great War, there was a concerning amount of radioactive waste. Throughout the games, we have encountered radiation so intense, mere minutes or even seconds are enough to send us to the great vault above. Here we look at the most radioactive locations within the entire series.
Man, it's kind of like that feeling about radioactivity in like Fallout. It's just like this dirty, poisonous, man-made monstrosity. You know, like when you go to like the crater in Fallout 4, it's just this dirty. Like you don't even want to like it'd make you not want to eat for 5 days because that's how dirty it is. I mean, it's got this synthetic waste area. It's just different. You know what I mean?
Rank them in ascending order, starting with the least radioactive, working our way to the #1 spot, which is the most radioactive spot in the whole franchise. So crank up those rads, and I better not see you popping any Rad-X or Radaway, as things get toasty in the most irradiated locations in Fallout.
Rad-X.
First on the list, but dead last in the rankings, is the most radioactive location in Fallout 2. It is Gecko Nuclear Plant. Or rather, the official name is the Poseidon Oil Reactor 5, but that name kind of makes it sound like an oil power plant rather than a nuclear one. It makes sense that a nuclear reactor would be the most radioactive place in Fallout 2, but it is especially so because the reactor is not running very efficiently. Although it is functioning, it needs some work to get it into tip-top shape, and most importantly, it needs a new hydroelectric magnetosphere regulator. Shockingly, someone doesn't have such a common item kicking around in their garage, and the only known place that has one is Vault City. Only problem is, Vault City freaking hates bulls. But to be fair, they hate everyone that isn't them. Once you get the part, it's super easy to fix. You just need to amplify the plutonium gamma shield, deharmonize the Neptune impeller, calibrate the uranium rod driver, set the voltage on the Saturn-class capacitor, test the Jupiter wave compiler, and lastly, install the regulator that you hopefully stole from Vault City. You got all that? Or instead of doing all of that, just program the helper robot to do it, because the area right outside of the reactor is Fallout 2's most radioactive location. The amount of radiation can only be measured if you are equipped with a Geiger counter, of which there are several possible ones that can be bought or stolen in the wasteland. But make sure its battery isn't dead or it won't be able to move at all. You can only get a reading when it is equipped, and only when activated. It gives one reading, which is how much radiation is in the chosen one's body at that exact moment. That is quite a bit different from later games, where the Geiger counter is incorporated into the Pip-Boy and gives a real-time readout of how radioactive the current environment is, as well as the player's overall radiation level.
I have 2 Geiger
This also
counters.
means that the Geiger counter
I have
gives us
a
measurements in REMs.
I got a GMC 300 plus E and a GMC 600 plus. GMC 600 plus is like 4 times the cost of the GMC 300E, but if you can buy it over the 300E, do it. It is so much worth it. You can detect alpha with the GMC 600 plus, whereas you can't do it with the 300E. It is super duper sensitive. When I say sensitive, it is like the most sensitive Geiger counter I have ever laid my hands upon, and I've ever seen or heard about. I do recommend you get it.
Instead of RADs, and this makes for an interesting difference. RADs measure how much energy
Radiation absorbed
is
dose.
deposited into something. For example, water or organics. REMs measure the dose of radiation that a person receives. And lucky for us, in most instances, the conversion from RAD to REM is 1-for-1. One of the exceptions is if the radiation source is alpha radiation. Then the RAD to REM conversion is not 1-to-1, but it's between 1-to-10 and 1-to-20.
Alpha is very common.
simply far more damaging if it manages to make it.
Oh, it is. It's the most dangerous radiation you can absorb.
I will take that into account as well. Lastly, the radiation values that we get in later games are rads per second. But there isn't a good way to measure REMs per second in Fallout 1 or 2. So I take a reading of the Geiger counter, then wait in the Pip-Boy for 1 hour, and measure directly afterward. Then I convert that value into REMs per second. Alright, so with all that fun stuff out of the way, and against all the advice from the couples that are working in the Gecko nuclear power plant, I stepped into a blistering reactor area. With no Rad-X, no radiation blocking clothing or armor, and my radiation resistance set to 0 with an endurance of 1, the amount of radiation I encounter is the most I can possibly absorb. In between 1 hour waits, I encountered 30 REMs, and this went until the chosen one died, but it wasn't because of radiation. In addition to radiation damage, you will also receive normal damage, and that is actually what killed me dead. 30 REMs per hour converts to a maximum of 0.00 rads per second, or if all the radiation was alpha radiation,
That seems
which it
relatively
probably
weak.
wasn't, then it would be 0.0004 rads per second at the minimum. That's, well, not a lot, at least when compared to the other games. The amount of time in-game that it takes to die from radiation takes actually quite a long time. I waited over 4 days in this location before I ran out of stim packs and died from HP loss rather than radiation accumulation. So it takes days of hanging out in here to kill the chosen one, which might be fairly close to what it would be in real life based on the radiation levels. I also wanted to compare what the real life effects would be based on these radiation levels, and there are a few details here. Rads and REMs aren't actually the units of measurement that we use for radiation anymore. Rather, most often we use rays and sieverts. I do think using the older terms,
Sieverts are the
rads
best.
and REMs in the games, are appropriate for Fallout though, given the retrofuturism that is so heavily represented. Plus, Gray King and Sievert King just don't have the same ring to it. 1 gray is 100 REMs, and chilling in the reactor room for an hour, getting dosed with 30 REMs, would expose you to 0.3 grays. Based on some acute radiation syndrome charts, this is an amount that would have no obvious immediate or latent effects, with a possibility of a long-term effect being minor blood changes or reduced appetite. I do have an honorable mention for a very irradiated location in Fallout 2, and that is the Toxic Dump Special Encounter, where the map is filled with radioactive waste and geckos. And if you want to snack on something that'll fit the bill. Okay, so 0.00 rads per second is less radiation
That is
than
really
drinking
weak.
just a normal Nuka-Cola in Fallout 3, so everything has got to be up from here. The glow in the first Fallout is infamous throughout the California wasteland for being the most radioactive location, and indeed, it is the deadliest place in the first Fallout, at least with respect to radiation. Truth be told, there are not really any other locations with large-scale radiation in the whole game, so it kind of wins by default, but at least it is more radioactive than anywhere in Fallout 2. You have to travel over a very large distance to get to the center of the globe, which was a fortified West Tech research facility that drew the attention of the Chinese bombs. Because it takes a good deal of time to travel in the overworld from the edge of the globe to the center, it is a good idea to bring some Rad-X and Radaway. But since I'm doing this for science, I once again had 0 rad resistance, 1 endurance, and no radiation-resistant clothing or chems. Standing at the center of the globe, I first measured how many REMs the Vault Dweller accumulated from standing at the bombed-out entrance of the West Tech facility, which ended up being a hefty 1,845 REMs.
Oof.
That makes the nuclear reactor in Fallout 2 just look so pathetic. I wanted to test each floor in the facility,
That's toasty.
and I was able to go down to the first level and wait for an hour.
I don't know. I don't really know a really good scale of REM, but I do know like when you get circuit to 1,000 REMs, it's pretty bad.
But none of the other levels of the West Tech facility will allow you to rest, so I couldn't test every level. But level 4 has the Zax supercomputer. If you challenge Zax to a chess match, 2 hours will elapse. I just checked my radiation levels before playing chess, looked at them after playing chess, and took into account that 2 hours had passed instead of only 1. Level 4 had the lowest radiation levels of the other 2 locations. And I have to say, intuitively, this makes sense. I would have expected to encounter less and less radiation as we go deeper into the facility, as there's a good chance that the walls, floors, doors, and other barriers would have kept radiation from penetrating farther into the facility. So let's look at the highest reading of 1,845 REMs per hour on the surface. That is about 0.5 rads per second, or if all the radiation were alpha radiation, which it assuredly isn't, but I'm just doing due diligence, it would be a minimum of 0.03 rads per second. 1,845 REMs in an hour would be 18.45 grays, which would put you in some very bad territory. At least for all of you not in doubt that was blessing. The immediate effects would be nausea in 5 minutes or less, and latent effects are pretty horrific. Diarrhea, gastrointestinal bleeding, and
Yeah,
rapid
radiation
cell
is
death
not really that friendly.
But the body will often then enter a phase called the walking ghost phase, where all symptoms kind of go away,
and then they'll
energy levels
come
will
back.
up, almost like you're recovering. However,
But then,
this
boom.
will only last at most 2 weeks, where the terminal phase begins, and the exposed person gets a high fever, falls into a coma, and will die within a week. In game, you can only stand at the entrance for about 21 hours with no radiation protection before the Vault Dweller succumbs to acute radiation syndrome. which
That's
is
the sad thing about
not far
radiation.
off.
That is very true. With that one guy that dumped uranium concentrate into a container and exposed himself to like the most radiation a person's ever done. How long it was, or it was like top 10 most radioactive people ever. He like you'll basically like you'll begin to recover, right? And it'll be like, oh, it's all over. However, like yeah, within a very short amount of time, within a few days to like 2 weeks, as he said, it'll just come back, and it is hell on earth. When I'm saying it's hell. Your body is quite literally destroying itself from the inside out. Your organs completely start to shut down. Your white blood cell count destroyed. A simple flu virus can kill you within hours. It is evil. Yeah, keep going on.
Life at those radiation levels. So So even though the globe ain't playing around, there are 4 more games with radioactive locations that make this look like just eating a banana. And speaking of fruit, in Fallout 1, fruit is once again the only radioactive consumable in the whole game. Third from the bottom, do you know which game has the next most irradiated location? Yes, it is the one, the only, Fallout New Vegas. It's funny how the 3 Interplay/Obsidian games were all at the bottom of the list. Well, I guess I haven't mentioned Fallout Tactics, and I might as well state right here that it actually won't be on the list, mostly because there are once again very few locations with a bunch of background radiation, but also because there's no way to measure the radiation amounts in-game because the Geiger counter was cut. The only way to know that you're irradiated is to see if a team member starts getting penalties to their special stats. And that reminds me of another thing. The first 3 games, Fallout, Fallout 2, and Tactics, all use the term radiated when the player gets a significant amount of radiation. But the term should be irradiated. Interplay, what sillies. Forgive the tangent, back to the Mojave. Since Fallout New Vegas uses Fallout 3's engine, as well as a lot of the same assets and systems,
Where do I fill this thing
the way
at?
radiation is detected and shown to the player is the same system that Fallout 3 introduced. The Geiger counter provides constant real-time feedback to the player, displaying the amount of radiation in an area or the amount ingested when ingesting a consumable or chem. This is displayed in rads per second, so we get some really good granular results to find the precise location of the most radioactive areas of the wasteland. Of many irradiated places in the Mojave, do you know where you can bask in more Adam's glow than any other? It is the location of Dry Wells, which is only reachable by the courier after the events of the Lonesome Road DLC, and only if the courier chose to aim and fire the nukes at the Legion. Dry Wells is a Legion camp south from Cottonwood Cove along the banks of the Colorado River, and this location had significance to Ulysses, the protagonist of the DLC. It was part of the territory of his old tribe, the Twisted Hairs, before the tribe was destroyed and assimilated into the Legion. So what I'm trying to get at is that the Legion freaking deserved it. The location itself is just destroyed buildings, random fires, a smoky haze, and at the very end of the area, a crater from nuclear detonation. The courier has to fight their way to the crater, fighting brutally difficult, irradiated legionaries, and eventually facing off against Gaius Magnus, the centurion that commanded the Legion forces in this area right before they met the Light of Atom. The crater is, unsurprisingly, the hotspot for the radiation in this area, and there is a strange effect where the screen will dim to black when entering the crater, although after several seconds the dimming effect will go away entirely. I measured 240 rads per second at the center of the crater, but if you toggle collision off and go into the air above the crater a little bit, you can find a max level of 308 rads per second. And again, this is with a character that doesn't have any radiation.
That is actually kind of true. Okay, I found out something very interesting. I have a radioactive bowl, a Fiestaware bowl, and I've compared these to plates. Like I found a plate that's similar size. When measuring the amount of radiation coming off of a, let's say like a plate, I'll get like 80 to 90 microsieverts an hour. But if you hold it above bowls, you can get it up to 120 to 140 microsieverts per hour, which means that a crater-shaped or bowl-shaped radioactive object will generate a hell of a lot more radiation above its surface, because if you think about, like, if there was radiation coming off of every surface and you make something concave, the mouth of the concave object is going to be more radioactive, because it's kind of hard to explain, but if you drew a picture out and you really realized it, you would get it. But yeah, I think the crater would be radioactive if you were floating above it, rather than if you were just on the floor inside of it. That is actually kind of true there.
Clothing or perks. 308 rads per second could be either 300 grams or as high as 6,160 grams if it is all alpha radiation going straight into our veins. And that's a very large spread. Converting these values works out to a range of 0.31 to 61.6 grays per second. So one single second of exposure could vary between no immediate effect or nearly instant coma and disorientation. Using just the conservative 0.31 gray measurement at these radiation levels, it would only take 1 minute of exposure before the long-term prognosis would be certain death in 1 week or less, and 4.5 minutes of exposure at this level would cross the 80 gray cutoff, where it is theorized that instant unconsciousness and death within 24 hours would occur. That is one spicy meatball. Standing at the center of the crater with no radiation protection will kill you dead in 4 seconds flat, which is really fast, and is also faster than what would happen in real life. Some honorable mentions from Fallout New Vegas are the Courier's Mile, another location that can be nuked through the Lonesome Road DLC, but the peak radiation here isn't even close to Drywell's, sitting in the 20s. Likewise, the crater of the Long 15, which is the site where the nukes bomb NCR positions, is only around 20 rads per second at the most. Interestingly, the only place most people think of in New Vegas when intense radiation is mentioned is Camp Searchlight, which is unique because it was a position held by the NCR until a covert sabotage mission by the Legion uncorked some pre-war nuclear waste that had been sitting in the fire station for centuries. This quickly irradiated the entire area, killing many NCR personnel, ghoulifying many others, but the max radiation I found here was in the fire station at around 18 rads per second. This does make it the most irradiated spot in the base game, but it is a far cry from what we see elsewhere. Camp Searchlight is also the spot with the most irradiated,
Especially in Fallout,
consumables,
again, 70
all of
rads
which
a
fills
second.
the player with 10 rads per item. So go ahead and enjoy these refreshing beverages if these radioactive places just aren't quite doing it for you. So we have made it to third place. What is the third most radioactive place in the whole game? Kinda, sorta, no. Well, we have to travel to Appalachia to find it, and go back in time to only decades after the Great War, to a place known as the Emmett Mountain Disposal Site. The radiation and radioactive containers outside of the disposal site.
Oh yeah, that place is hot. I barely been there, and that's why.
Things are so much worse. This disposal site was operated by the Department of Energy and chosen specifically due to its geology as a place to hide away hundreds of barrels filled with some of the most dangerous radioactive waste imaginable. In true Fallout fashion, the construction efforts were shoddy, cutting corners and using inferior materials. This resulted in a partial collapse of some of the underground portions of the disposal site, trapping 2 workers and crushing the barrels holding the nuclear waste. This disaster led to the leaching of radioactive material into the groundwater and a temporary suspension of work as the site was sealed off. The crew in charge of the site got almost zero assistance, although they had an environmental disaster on their hands, and the only doctors sent to monitor the workers seemed less interested in treating any potential exposure and instead more interested in gathering information on what effects personnel were experiencing due to the radiation. Supervisor after supervisor would suddenly go missing after they tried going to Washington, D.C. themselves to try and get answers as to why they were just being left out to dry. After the war, the facility, unsurprisingly, became infested with ghouls around the exterior, and after the release of the Wastelanders update, has become a hotbed of scavengers and others who are trying to mine the irradiated ore. You know what they say, one man's bone-rotting environmental disaster is another man's livelihood, or something. Going inside, there are a few places where there isn't at least a little bit of radiation, and so plenty of Rad-X, Radaway, and radiation-resistant clothing is a must for exploring in any great amount. Or you can just do what I did and spam the hotkey for Radaway until I break my freaking keyboard. The highest levels of radiation are near the end of each disposal area, of which there are 4 that are explorable. Their peak radiation numbers were all around the same, so there is
448 rads a second? That is...
Base radiation seems to consistently be right before we get to the end, which I kind of found surprising.
500
I would guess that
rats.
the most radioactive spots would be at the very end. You can find areas with 600 rads per second.
Oh my
with a
God.
peak of 623. Converting that to grays per second, it would be between 0.62 and 124.6 grays. That is the difference between some vomiting, a lower blood cell count, and impairment of the immune system, with a high likelihood of survival, to near instant death. At 0.62 grays per second, it would take just over 2 minutes of exposure to immediately lose consciousness and die within 24 hours. Unfortunately, it seems this was the exact fate of the 2 workers who were trapped in the collapse. But the bright side is that they didn't have to resort to cannibalism and turn into a grotesque rage monster. So, winning, I guess. In-game, with no radiation resistance, the player dies in 2 seconds flat. Wow, that is quick, but also probably much quicker than real life. There are a few other quite radioactive areas in Fallout 76, such as the Federal Disposal Field,
That spiky place.
HT-121, and some nuclear exhaust ports near some abandoned mines in Ashy, which have higher peak radiation counts, but they're not quite as flashy or cover an area nearly as large as a nuclear blast zone. The fissure sites are also radioactive, but at a more disappointing 49 rads per second. But it does have a lovely effect of insta-killing anyone who goes down and touches the beautiful green goo. Also, a special mention to the Pit Expedition, which has you exploring what is left of Pittsburgh not long after the war, and is the largest area with permanent radiation levels that can vary quite a bit, but don't reach the highest levels seen at Emmett Mountain. If you want to complement your stroll through Emmett Mountain with a spicy beverage, the toxic goo you get at the West Tech Research Center will hit you with a whopping 125 rads in one go. There are an insane number of consumables that are radioactive in this game. If you think you know what the second place on this list will be, 99% of you are wrong. Sorry, it's just statistics. Don't take it personally. The second most radioactive place in the entire series is the positively glowing Vault 87 entrance. You thought that would be number 1, didn't you? We will get to that in a second, but the entrance of Vault 87 is irradiated to an absolutely absurd degree. Vault 87 was initially meant to conduct research into an unknown project before scrapping those plans and pivoting towards FEV research instead. It became the source for super mutants in the Capital Wasteland, and although it's never stated directly why, the area just outside of the vault entrance is horrendously irradiated, like glowing piss, bone-aching levels of radiation. There is a sign near the entrance that seems to be pre-war in origin, since it is an industrial-type sign that is warning of radiation exposure, and even says that the annual radiation dose for a human will be reached in 0.5 seconds. And let's remember this for a little later. I don't really see why such a sign would be put up in the post-war, and why they would even bother to write in the amount of time it takes to get the annual exposure. I'm sure in the post-war world, the annual exposure is much higher than the pre-war as well. So if this was erected in the pre-war, what could have possibly caused all this radiation? At the absolute peak of the radiation, I measured a maximum of 3,933 rads per second, although some have claimed to get over 4,000.
Oh my
The
God.
hottest spot is several yards away from the entrance proper, but for the adventurous among you, the entrance does have a few surprises. The vault cannot be opened from this entrance, sealed either on purpose or as a result of time and decay, with a number of skeletons holding suitcases strewn about. Interestingly, there's also a deceased scientist in a radiation suit, so it seems we are not the only ones that find this hot spot interesting. It's just too bad that she didn't have access to console commands. 3,933 rads per second is
That's
nearly
a hell of a lot.
rays, which that alone is enough exposure in 1 second to induce vomiting, fever, diarrhea, and emaciation for up to 2 days. The long-term prognosis also is not good, with hair loss, bone marrow damage, and internal bleeding being the result, with a fatality rate of 50% within 6 weeks. And that is just from 1 second of exposure. It would only take 20 seconds to go into the theoretical territory where it's believed one would suddenly lose consciousness and die within 24 hours. In the game with no radiation protection, you die within less than half a second. Dear Adam above, there isn't anything you can do in that amount of time to save your life. So back to that sign that spoke about the annual allowable radiation level. That level is 5 rems, which, depending on the radiation level, can equal just a straight 5 rads. 5 rads a year. At the most radioactive spot, we hit that limit in 0.3 milliseconds. Yowza. The sign at the beginning that mentions the annual dose being achieved in 0.5 seconds is off by a factor of 3. I know I had said that the Emmett Mountain site was the 3rd most irradiated before, and you know what? I lied to you. And I liked it. Since we are going by game, that wasn't really truthful, since Fallout 3 also technically has the 3rd most irradiated place in the wasteland that we know of, and it is in the Pit DLC. Yes, I mentioned this when talking about Fallout 76, but the Pit is monstrously irradiated, and that serves a key plot point in the Pit DLC, where it is discovered that a baby has been blessed with Adam's gift and is immune to radiation. The Monongahela River flows beneath a bridge that is crossed shortly after the beginning of the game in order to enter the pit. If you jump down into the water and go east, which you can only do with console commands, there will be a hotspot that maxes out at 2,665 rads per my observations. Another honorable mention is what happens if you decide to activate the GECK inside Vault 87 instead of taking it like the main quest wants you to. After navigating through 3 different menus, again, the game really doesn't want you to activate it, a blast of energy will knock the player down and they'll be unable to get back up. The amount of radiation isn't nearly as high as the other places, but being unable to move means that you eventually succumb to the 80 to 140 rads per second that you get after activating it. Also, the pit introduced the most irradiated food item, the incredibly named slop, which is made from troc meat, which are just hideously mutated humans, and is a part of a balanced breakfast. And so we have made it to the #1 spot, and it is going to require little explaining, but hear me out. The most irradiated place in the entire Fallout series isn't the crater of Adam, or anywhere in the irradiated fog on Far Harbor. It is actually the reactor
Yes!
mass fusion.
Hell yeah! Oh my god, I was right! I remember my first time completing the game, and I went into the mass fusion reactor. I'm like, holy hell! My god! Because it's like, I remember getting 70 rads at one point. That's the hottest place in the game.
Mass fusion was one of the major power suppliers to Boston and the surrounding areas, but they do not use fusion to do it, like their name implies. They were fooling people into thinking they were getting clean fusion power.
Boo!
They were still using fission to generate electricity. Behind the curtain, however,
Mass Fusion is a garbage company, crappy company.
And had a breakthrough when they created the beryllium agitator. But before they were able to capitalize,
Yeah, they're a trash company. They literally dispose of their nuclear waste out in just nature. They literally environmentally destroyed a lot of area in that game.
on this success, the Great War erupted across the Institute, or the Brotherhood of Steel, and the main item of interest is that agitator, which will require you to enter the reactor room. There's actually not much background radiation here, unless you decide to jump into the water below, but even those radiation levels aren't all that impressive, just at 45 rads per second. None of the machinery appears to be radioactive, and neither does that bright blue beam, although it will definitely insta-kill you if you touch it. So, why is this the most radioactive place in the series? Well, if in the course of fighting through levels of enemies and robots, you find yourself a little thirsty in the reactor room and decide to take a quick drink from the water below, that will be the last thing you do. But, and this is a big but, the thing that is killing you when you drink the water is not any special sort of toxic substance, it is radiation. The only way that we can uncover this is by using one of my favorite clothing items, the robes of Adam's Devoted. These special robes have a unique attribute where the more irradiated one is while wearing them, the greater their radiation resistance. This has what is possibly an unintended consequence, but maybe the developers meant to do this, where you can fully irradiate yourself without dying. Fallout 4 had changed the radiation system, where your radiation level caps your health, and if you get too irradiated, you'll have no more HP, and with no HP, you die. So this is cool for a lot of reasons, and I have a whole Child of Adam build video that uses the robes and shows all the stuff you can do when you are filled with Adam's holy glow. And if you're interested in that, go watch the video. All that matters here irradiate yourself fully, go down to the water to drink. Rather than instantly dying like before, you briefly get hit with rads, and it is
9,999 rads.
Geiger counter. We take an astonishing 9,000.
Dude, I didn't know that's how you get the most rads.
In 1 second. Although it's impossible to say if the true value is higher or not. Maybe if we had a dosimeter that had a higher threshold, we can know for sure. And this whole thing is giving me major Chernobyl vibes. But let's just use that 9,000 rad figure. That would be a gray dosage of between 10 and 2,000 rays. Since we are ingesting the water, this is the one location that has the highest likelihood of dosing us with alpha radiation, which normally cannot penetrate the skin and must be brought into the body through some other means like ingestion. You know, the thing we just did. At 10 grays per second, it would take 8 seconds to hit that 80 gray level that would knock us unconscious. But the fact that we just straight up fall down completely dead, like my hopes of never buying a house, leads me to believe that the rad count is much higher, and we are just limited by the Geiger counter display. Alternatively, maybe the rad count is correct, but it's all alpha radiation, and so the actual grams are way higher. This actually could make sense since swimming in the water is only 45 rads, but ingesting it is way more. What is really interesting too is that if you wear the robes of Adam's Devoted and don't completely irradiate yourself before you drink the water, it will actually kill you, even though the robes should keep you from dying to radiation damage. I tested the blue beam to see if it was also radiation that insta-kills us, and sadly it's not. That one seems to be just straight up damage. Boo. The amount of time it takes to die from this radiation level is instantaneous. As soon as the drinking animation is done and the rads are applied, you're dead, unless you have Adam's Holy Protection. Some honorary Fallout 4 mentions are Hugo's Hole, which is the hideout of a raider that has been booby-trapped with a number of things, including some radioactive barrels. The USS Democracy that is located inside the nucleus on the island. The most radioactive part of the sub are the ICBM tubes that house the nuclear warheads, which are also the most radioactive location in the entire nucleus. The crater of Adam should be quite radioactive, but I can only ever measure a peak of 16 rads per second, and a small hotspot of 19 if you clip beneath the surface. Oh, and the most radioactive of all consumables can be enjoyed thanks to the Farm Hardware DLC, which are the sludge packs. There are several kinds that can increase stats like agility or damage resistance, delivering a whopping 150 rads of a dose, which is the highest of any consumable in the game, and it will deliver a stat increase that is relative to how much radiation you currently have, making them super powerful when coupled with my Child of Adam build. There are Fallout's most irradiated places, and it's fun to see how the Bethesda games, generally speaking, are much more radioactive than Interplay and Obsidian. And Fallout 3 has more super high radiation locations than any other game. I would love to hear your comments on this, and big thanks to my patrons, and especially my
Alright,
two
I'm gonna
patrons,
go.
Sydney H.
I don't know if I'll be back on the farming sim, but I either play Ark or this game, or Trailmakers. Bye, guys.